Let's record into the cloud. All right. So let me get off. There's a countywide COVID call happening. Okay. Okay, so let's get started then. This is a candidate Q&A. My name is Lewis Harris. I'm the treasurer of a new political action committee here in Snohomish County called the Snohomish Ebony Political Action Committee. We do have David Simpson, who regularly attends our meetings, and then also our chair of the Political Action Committee, Clarence Shaw, joining us. But we're a political action committee focused on the expansion of representation of African Americans in the political arena. And we're joined here by two of our favorite candidates and candidates that we've endorsed for our first year, April Berg and John Lovick, both running for the 44th LD, that's 44th Legislative District House of Representatives seats. And so this is just gonna be a real casual Q&A session, and so if anybody has any questions, it'd be much appreciated if you put them in the chat. And we are recording this meeting for the purpose of releasing it later. So let's get started. First, in the spirit of ladies go first, Ms. Berg, would you be willing to just do a brief introduction about you, who you are, and why you're running for this position?
Absolutely. And just I want to start off with thank you, SEPAC, for having this forum. Thank you for just existing in Snohomish County, because it's so important to have representation. Representation matters. And so it's great to be at an event like this tonight. I'm April Berg. I'm running for position 2 in the 44th to be the next state rep for this district. That includes Mill Creek, Lake Stevens, Snohomish, a little bit of Marysville, a little bit of Everett. I'm running because I have spent the last 23 years in Snohomish County with my 6 beautiful kids that are all the products of public education, serving. Currently, I'm serving as an Everett School Board Director. I'm a former school board director for Edmonds. I'm also a city planning commissioner for the city of Mill Creek. And I also serve on the Snohomish County Juvenile Justice Cultural Competency Board, working with the folks up at Denny Correctional Facility for Juvenile Youth. When this pandemic started, it was my daughter's high school that had the first COVID positive student in the nation. So I was thrust in kind of a leadership position that was just much bigger than anything I had anticipated. The first thing I did was ask, what do our families need in terms of technology, food, support for childcare? And because of asking questions, we were able to meet those families' needs with emergency childcare, with thousands of hotspots and laptops, as well as hundreds of thousands of meals. That's the kind of advocacy that I want to bring to Olympia. That's why I'm running to represent the 44th. In addition to that, I'm a former small business owner. I used to own the Edmonds Inn Bed and Breakfast. And I'm also a former program manager for the Boeing Company. So for me, my background really represents the 44th, a commitment to community, a believer in strong public education, and an understanding of aerospace and small business. So that's a little bit about who I am and why I'm running.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that introduction, Ms. Berg. And so the other candidate we have is no stranger to Snohomish County politics, and also one of our long coveted legacy candidates and politicians in the area, Mr. John Lovick. Mr. Lovick, would you be so kind as to let us know why you're running to retain your seat in the 44th House of Representatives?
So thank you, and I also want to thank you guys for the great work that you are doing, and thanks for hosting us tonight. And my opening statement is always the same. I always tell people that we're dealing with a global pandemic, social unrest, economic uncertainty, and we just came out of the worst wildfire season ever. The election that we're going through, the 2020 election, is about leadership, and it is about results. We need leaders to help guide us through the global pandemic, embrace unity, diversity, and strength, and we need someone to help heal this horrible racial divide. And I always say to people that I am that person, And that is why I am running. I love the work that we get to do. I have spent almost 14 years in the legislature. Uh, I spent 13 years in the Coast Guard, 31 years with the Washington State Patrol. I was on the Mill Creek City Council for 5 years. I was county sheriff for 5.5 years and county executive for 2.5 years. I love public service and I love the work that we get to do. And I absolutely love serving in the state legislature. And that's why I'm running again.
Excellent. So glad to hear that. And thank you so much for your service, Mr. Lovick, truly. So we do have a few prearranged questions for y'all, just to help kind of round out this introduction so that folks know some of the issues where you stand on some issues that are most pertinent to the community. And so one of the questions we have is, what do you plan on accomplishing during your term? And since we started with April before, why don't we start with you, Mr. Lovick?
Thank you. So one of the things that I'm serving on is I am serving on a policing policy leadership team. There are 7 of us on this team, and we're looking at how law enforcement is working. We're looking at building community relations and accountability. And on this policing policy leadership team, we're looking at everything, an evolution of policing. And I'll say this right up front. I'll say this with respect to my soon-to-be colleague, April Berg. None of us are talking about defunding policing. We're talking about reimagining policing. We're talking about an evolution of policing. So I know we will accomplish that. We absolutely have to balance the budget. Everybody talks about balancing the budget. It's a state law. We have to balance the budget. But what I am personally working on, and I've worked on this every year, on having good, safe schools, good, safe roads, and good jobs with benefits. But when I left Olympia, I drafted a bill, and I've collected 28 signatures on the bill to create a statewide pandemic preparation and response task force. The gist of this task force is to look at how we responded, tell us what went right, what went wrong, and what we simply must do better. This task force is probably going to be a cast of 1,000, because every time I let somebody else read the bill, it's a 5-page bill, they keep saying we need to add this and add that. So that's one of the things that I'm working on, and we're going to make it happen. And we're really going to make it happen because we're going to have a team down there, just like the team of Lovick Mead. We're going to have the team of Lovick Berg, and it's going to make a huge difference.
So I'm excited about the ring of that. So thank you so much for that answer, Mr. Lovick. Ms. Berg, I should probably call you Ms. Berg out of, for the sake of equality. I'm going to get used to that. Same question to you. What do you plan on accomplishing during your term?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And I always, couch my answer with the current public health crisis that we're in. And so my first priority is going to be economic growth. We really have to focus on our economy during this next session for a variety of reasons. One is that we are really in the midst of a disaster. It's a recession, but it's also a disaster. And so part of what I want to do is really make sure we have the right mindset coming into session. And so that mindset can't be about cuts. When you have a disaster, when you have a hurricane hit a community, you don't go into that community and say, do you need that roof? Can we put everything on the table and see what you don't need? No, you say, how can I make you whole? How can I make you better than you were before? We need to take that mindset into the next session. So we need to look at some new progressive revenue sources, because like Representative Lovick said, we have to have a balanced budget. So we do need to talk about revenue, structure, and sources. We need to talk about the inequities that we see in our current regressive tax structure. And we need to talk about the potentiality of closing some loopholes that we have currently around capital gains and other benefits that the folks at the tippy top are really, quite frankly, taking advantage of. The other piece that we need to focus on is education. We know that our schools do so much with so little. So I really want to focus on making our schools stronger a couple of ways. One is having a simple majority for capital bond passage. It's a wonky thing, but it's a huge thing. It's going to get more infrastructure projects, which means more jobs, more folks working, and it's going to strengthen our education systems. We're one of only a handful of states that don't have a simple majority for capital bond passage. That needs to change. The other piece of what I want to do around education is a career and technical education diploma pathway. again, we need more folks being in skilled trades and fields that we know are growing. We have to not only supply the infrastructure projects, but we have to give the education to our students so they can fill those good, solid wage jobs. And then lastly, we do need to focus on healthcare. And when I talk about healthcare, we're talking about everything from making PPE locally to have expanding the public option to making sure that when the vaccine is available, I'm an optimist, I know it will become available. We have to make sure that its rollout is equitable. And I want to repeat myself. Its rollout is equitable. And we got to start having those conversations now before the vaccine hits, because it's going to be too late if we scramble and say, oh, we forgot about this. This marginalized community wasn't included. So those are the things I want to focus on next session. And I'm looking forward to being a partner with Representative Lovick, because I couldn't ask for a better mentor.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that answer. I'm getting goosebumps at the likelihood, and crossing my fingers still. Next question that I have for both of you, and April or Ms. Berg, would you mind answering first? Where do you see the needs in our community, and probably speak closer to the 44th legislative district?
And so when you say needs, like around like priorities, or I guess,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think in terms of the 44th, the first thing when I talk with voters, and I tell you, we call thousands of voters the last 6 or 7 months, transportation. So when you think about the 44th, you think about transportation. We are truly the forgotten North up here. We've got a lot of projects that waylaid and haven't been focused on. And of course, now we have a pandemic. And so folks are talking about stopping or putting things in the mothballs. So we need to focus on transportation, because we've got to get connected to light rail. We've got to get the trestle, up and going. We have to focus on getting our region and our communities moving. We can't have those commute times from Everett and Lake Stevens into the city, border on 2 hours plus. So that's a huge piece of it. The other need, again, is education, and we have to strengthen and focus on our schools. And then the third piece of it is really that economic piece. Our communities are suffering. The consumer confidence is down. Talking with voters, even if we opened up our main streets tomorrow, folks don't feel confident to go spend. They don't feel safe. They know from a federal level, we've really been let down. So I think for us in the 44th, it's really focusing on taking care of our communities, re-engaging with our community, our consumers, making sure they're confident, so that when we do have safe reopening, that folks will get out there and engage economically in their communities.
Excellent. Thanks so much for that answer. Mr. Lovick, same question to you. Where do you see the needs in our community, specifically in the 44th?
I have to underscore everything April said. And again, that's why we are going to be such a great team. The only thing I would add to what she said is I really believe we need leaders like John Lovick and April Berg, who will unite us and not divide us. Right now, we are so divided. We're divided down economic lines. We're certainly divided down racial lines. We need leaders who are not going to go out there and do and say stupid things, and they are always apologizing for something that they did or said, whether it be a post about cars running over people, or whether it be something that some horrible hit piece against April. Those things don't bring communities together. We need leaders that are going to unite us and not divide us. But other than that, everything that April said, I agree with. I think we need to have good, safe schools where kids feel good being in school, good, safe roads that are not clogged with traffic, and to continue the good jobs with benefits. And the way we get these good jobs with benefits, we just have to make sure that when we reopen our economy, that the economy is reopened in a safe way, and that we're not having like what happened in Florida and Georgia, where they open and close and open and close. But the needs are, we just need two good leaders in the legislature. That's April Berg and John Lovick.
Excellent. So I have some questions coming in through the chat right now, and I want to get to those as well. One question I have is, so Kathy asks, She asks, so April, what is the most important thing we can do to get you elected? You wanna take a stab at that one?
That's a great question. So number one, vote. That's number one. If you're in the 44th, vote. Number two is phone bank. I'm going to put an asterisk on that. The first 5 calls you need to make are to your family and friends to make sure they've voted and that they have a plan to vote if they haven't. I say that because we all like to kind of dial for those votes and talk to folks in the community. But if you haven't talked to the folks in your household or on your family tree about voting, then you're really kind of not doing us the fullest service that you can do. So definitely, I would say for my campaign, we need phone bankers. We are calling literally thousands of voters. Last week, we called 2,400 voters. We are hand dialing those voters. We're having real conversations. We're leaving real voicemails. We call that our virtual lit drop, right? Because I can't knock on doors and drop that literature. So I'm leaving them messages. And today I talked to a voter who said, "Are you the real April Berg?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And he said, "Oh my gosh, you made my night." And he yelled to his wife, "But it's April Berg." I said, "Do you have any questions?" "No, no, 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 no. We already voted for you, but thanks." And so it's that enthusiasm that we're trying to, really ignite so that it catches on. So for me, it's all about phone banking and really getting the word out there. And like Representative Lovick said, staying positive. Both of our campaigns are tremendously positive and optimistic. And again, that's contagious to our supporters. So the more you can talk about our campaigns on social media to your family and friends, staying positive, keeping to our message of opening our economy and saving schools, and really following science, right, as we work through this public health crisis, that is the most helpful thing to us. But that's a great question, Kathy. Thanks.
Can I just answer a little bit of that, Louis, if you don't
Yeah,
mind?
please. Yeah, go ahead.
And also the visibility. If people could go out, I know if it's the Kathy that I think it is, I know she's out there every day waving signs. You could go out. My wife grabbed a few ladies today, and they went up at 164th. Go out and wave a few signs. And do it safely with the mask on. We are doing that. We're all over the place. Just see a sign stuffed in the ground somewhere, pull it out, and take a hammer with you and go out and just wave for an hour or so. You will not believe the positive. You're going to have some nasty people go by, but that's their right. But just go out and wave a few signs and make a lot of phone calls. And anyway, those things will help all of us.
Yeah, and there's a bit of a off the top follow-up question to that. I know both of y'all have been the target of some unfair sign destruction and whatnot. And do y'all have anything to speak on about that?
I would. So April and I, we talk. I called her today, and we talk regularly. So I got a phone call after the complaint was filed, and I was sitting down. It's going to happen. And if you've been in an election, I see David Simpson, that people are going to destroy your signs. I've been on the ballot 16, 17 times. People are going to destroy your signs. And my approach to it was this. You just almost have to feel sorry for people like that. And I did. As a matter of fact, I got this note from this attorney, this firm, wanting to know what type of retribution that I wanted. And when I received it, I actually had just heard a comment by Bob Robertson, who used to be the announcer for the Washington State Cougars. And my daughter is a graduate of WSU. And Bob Robertson said, "Always be a good sport always." So I was sitting there ready to write out the document on what to say to them. And I just simply said, I don't need any money, $10, $50, $500 for them destroying my sign. I chose to follow Bob Robertson's words when he said, "Always be a good sport always." And that's the way I handled it. And I'm at peace with myself.
Excellent. Very honorable for sure. April, did you want to say anything at all, or?
Yeah, I haven't been contacted at all by any lawyers or anything. We filed a police report, so I'm not sure, but I agree with John 100%. It's just staying positive. I think for our campaigns, I'll tell you, listening to him talk, it's the only place that you're going to find a difference probably between me and Representative Lovick. And you know what's coming. you got that cougar in your house, John. And so, we're a house full of Huskies over here. So other than that, we see eye to eye on everything. But I will absolutely say that I agree that it's just, you have to let bygones be bygones, and keep it moving, keep it positive. And really, I agree. I feel sorry for the gentleman who was in such turmoil to do something like that. That's, I think, speaks more to his issues than to ours.
Excellent. Very outstanding candidate.
Can I just say this? Can I just say this, Louis?
Sure.
That's who they are. This is who we are. It's right. About us. And this is who we are. And that's what we want to show the public. This is about us, and let them be who they are.
Well said, sir. Well said. Okay, so I'm going to get back to the questions that we have. So the next question, I'm actually, so John, you, Mr. Lovick, you actually answered this one, but so I'm going to point this at Ms. Berg. What is your take on defunding the police?
So I do not believe in defunding the police. Never have, never said those words, and I just absolutely don't believe it for a couple reasons. One, I believe that we need to have real, honest, difficult conversations about reimagining law enforcement and redirecting funds to things like social services, behavioral health, substance abuse, housing folks. I really do believe housing first as a priority will make more headway than defunding. Defunding is just the wrong, it's just the wrong direction to go. I say that as, coming from a law enforcement family. My brother has been 20 years in the Washington, D.C. Metro Police Force. He's active Air Force. We've had a great conversation on my kitchen conversations about reimagining policing in 2020 and having that conversation, not just with my brother, but him being a Black police officer, right? Doing the work. A lot of what he does is focusing on the training of new recruits. And I'll tell you, they've done some innovative things in DC Metro over the last many, many years. This is not a new concept or conversation for that specific police force. So I don't believe in defunding the police, but I do believe in reimagining law enforcement and criminal justice. It's just not working the way it is now. It's not keeping our communities as safe as they can be. And being a Black mother in the suburbs, I could go on and on about why that is. So we have to have these conversations. We have to make progress and make change, but defunding is not the right direction to go.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that answer. John, did you want to add to that?
I would like to. This is what I have said probably even before the word defund was being used. I tell people that I'm Black, I'm brown, and I'm blue. And when I say I'm blue, I wore the blue uniform of a state trooper for 31 years. And like April, my oldest son is a Los Angeles police officer. He's been there for 21 years now. And then I have other relatives. I had a cousin who retired from LAPD. I have other cousins who are in law enforcement. Nobody is talking about defunding police. April has never said anything about defunding police. But we are talking about reimagining an evolution of policing. Our focus, I know I've had this conversation with April, I've had it with all of the leaders of the Democratic Party. Our focus is on better community relations and accountability. Like Kamala Harris said when she was debating Pence, she said, bad cops make good cops bad. And they really do. That's what we're trying to, even the good police officers out there don't want bad cops among them. Bad cops make good cops bad. So our approach is community relations and accountability. And we're not talking about defunding. April has never said it. Or I would have stopped her because I know her well, and I have never said it. No one is talking about defunding. Thank you, though, for the question. Well thought out.
Absolutely, and thank you both for the answer. So another question that we have before we go to some of the chat questions we have is, how do you believe Washington's education system can be more equitable for African American students? And April, I know you're in the education system, so do you want to start? Maybe Mr. Lovick, we can follow up with you.
Yeah, so education is it's my passion. It's something, having 6 kiddos who have been through every stage of education in our great state. It's something I've honed through personal and lived experience. There's a lot of ways that we need to get more equitable. Let's start with just our educational foundations of what and how we teach our students. So we need ethnic studies curriculum. That needs to be a priority. We're slowly getting there. I'm excited to be serving with Representative Ortiz Self, who has made inroads into getting ethnic studies as a requirement. But now the hard work is going to start with working with OSPI and the individual districts about how they're going to implement that. And honestly, we need to work towards K-12 introduction of ethnic studies. And it can't be, myopic. It can't be siloed. It has to be filter into everything, because I think talking about systems of oppression and inclusion, it covers everything from science to history to math. And so that's number one. Number two, we have to look at our graduation disparities. OSPI does a great job of doing report cards for each and every school, each and every district. There are some glaring disparities in graduation rates for our students of color. We have to tackle those, and we have to be honest about why they are. I'm a data person. I love data. When I look at the data for the district that I represent in Everett, I can make direct correlations to the disparity in graduation rates for our students of color, to the disparity in discipline rates for our students of color. So imagine being that third grader overly disciplined for a variety of reasons, most of which is that your teacher might not understand your lived experience. It might be very different than what that teacher has lived. You're over disciplined. Now you're a 5th grader and you're discouraged. Well, now you're a 6th grader and you're despondent. And now you're a 9th grader and you're just tuned out. You're just done. And so we need to get you over the finish line by 12th grade, and we're pushing, we're shoving. And if you make it in a state that's not even community college remedial reading and math ready. That's a problem. We know it's a problem. We have the data that proves it. So as a state, we need to really focus on those disparities and why they occur. What I will say, it's not all hopeless, because we do have the data. We can strategically target through carrots and sticks ways to have districts do better by their students of color. And so that, for me as a legislator, it's going to be really important to start delving into that data, working with OSPI and working with the districts to make it better.
Excellent, thank you. Mr. Lovick, did you want to follow up with that?
That's hard to follow.
I know.
I mean, let's be real. You're supposed to make my job easy, man, but that's really hard to follow. But I'm going to do my best, if you will, if I can. The only thing I'm sorry, but I mean, when you listen to that lady talk, what I do is I just sit back and put my hand on my chin and just listen.
You're so sweet. Thank you, John.
Yeah, the only thing I would do is, I remember when I was county executive back in 2014, and several members of the Pilchuck Uniserve came to my office as county exec. And one of the guys was Justin Fox Bailey. And I remember him walking in, and a great guy. I always get along great with him. And he talked about, this was back in 2014, he talked about things like, how do we, as an agency, get more people of color in the profession? And we were talking, I said, every chance we get, all of us, every chance we get, we should be recruiting youngsters. We should be doing everything we can, because that was something we would say when David and I both grew up in Louisiana. And our principal, our teachers would always say something interesting to us. He would say, you can't be what you can't see. And what he meant by that was that when you see teachers like you, when you see teachers, African-American teachers, police officers, and all these professions, when you see them out there doing those things, you see yourself in those positions. We need to do everything we can to recruit young people, to convince them to go into teaching. My wife's a retired teacher. My daughter is a teacher. My son-in-law is a teacher, and my daughter-in-law is a teacher in the LA Unified School District. And you know what? They're doing everything they can to recruit, but we need to recruit more kids, more youngsters, talk them into going into the profession, because it's a wonderful profession. I call those teachers nation builders. I drop the word teachers. I refer to them as nation builders. We need to recruit more nation builders into the profession.
That was actually a really good follow-up. So that was good. That was good. I agree. Well, thank you both for those answers. So We're going to go to some chat questions, if you all are okay with that. One of the questions we have is, can you both speak a little bit about the most important ways that you differ from your opponents in your views? John, you want to, Mr. Lovick, start?
So I'll start with this one. You know, when I talk to you about the fact that we need leaders to help guide us through this pandemic, to embrace unity, diversity, and strength, and a person who doesn't look at power as just simply power, who knows how to exercise power, but to also exercise prudence. I think the number one difference between me and my opponent is simply experience. I have the experience. I know what I'm doing. I know how to work with other people. You will never, ever, ever see me posting things that I have to apologize for later, and just running my mouth for the sake of running it. And what I see from him is it's almost every other, quite often he will post things and then he apologizes for it. I've never had those things happen, but I think the number one difference is leadership ability and experience.
Excellent answer. Ms. Berg, did you want to answer that one?
Yeah, and it's a great question, because I think it's an important question as we're looking at elections, is to really make sure we can distinguish, right, between candidates. And I think for both Representative Lovick's race and mine, it's a really easy, easy to distinguish. So for my opponent, he is incredibly negative. And I say that not just in a general way, he's specifically negative. He believes that we need to cut and slash and take away and just really go back to these austerity measures that we did in 2008 with that recession, apply it to this disaster. And that would be horrific. It would just undercut and demolish really our social safety net that's so important and so needed during this disaster. So that's number one. Number two, he does not believe in science. He wholeheartedly embraces, conspiracy theories about science, and they're dangerous. He's said on Facebook that, mammograms are not necessary. They're not needed. He has said things like flu shots are not needed. Folks just go drink soup. Those are dangerous things. That applies to his views on the environment, women's rights. Men should never be under a woman, is one of his quotes. And even when it comes to education, his views, he penned kind of an opinion piece about, if folks can't afford college, they just shouldn't go. And it's dangerous, it's disheartening, it's negative, and it's not what's needed right now in terms of leadership. What we need is hope and optimism, and really someone who can lead with a view towards humanity for all. And I'll just leave you with what he said on the one forum he did make it to for League of Women Voters, when he was asked about racial justice and racial disparities. He started his answer with, "I'm offended at your questions." And it took us all aback, right? The League of Women Voters is nonpartisan, and he said, "I'm offended at the question," and that kind of embodies his candidacy. He's offended to even be asked or questioned about the current situation we're in right now, having these difficult conversations on race and social justice. So lots of differences, and unfortunately, it's dire. And so I'm hoping voters choose me to lead during this next session.
Can I just add one more point to April brought up something that just reminded me of something. A lot of times when you run against people like my opponent, and I always refer to him by name, but when you run against someone like him, you realize that the difference between the two of you, the major difference, is not right and left, it's right and wrong. And what I mean when I say that, it's just wrong to say some of the things that I've heard him say, and to do some of the things that I've seen him do. You know what went on May 31st, and then to apologize for it. It was wrong to repost information where people honestly went to him and put their address out there, and I know many of them are fearful of what's going to happen. That's not a difference between right and left. That's the difference between right and wrong. And that's the major difference between us. Thank you.
Thank you both. Thank you both.
Mr. Moderator,
Yeah, Clarence.
you mind if we yield to the high school students' entry here?
Yeah, I think we have plenty of time to get to all the questions,
Okay.
for sure. But
If
yeah,
you do, that's fine. Keep rolling then. You're good.
sure. Thank you. So we'll ask, the next question is from a high school student at Snohomish High School. What he says is, I wanted to ask if you would be able to make it easier to recall elected officials. My example of this would be Mayor John Cartack in Snohomish. As a community, we would like to recall him, but have not been able to because the process requires way too much work for regular citizens to do. Without an easier way to recall racist politicians like John Cartack, it allows him to be able to say whatever he wants in our community, further dividing it. Who wants to take the stab on that one first?
Can I have April take it first? And I need to just step away for a second because I need to get my furnace turned down so I won't get this background noise. And I'll be right back. I'm going to step away for just a second.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it's kind of, it's a complicated answer. I hate to say that. And I'm so happy that we've got students on tonight because it's so important to have students involved in this process, especially coming out to forums. And so, recalls are a two-way street. And so, I've been around politics long enough to know that the easier you make it to recall someone, that sometimes it'll be that racist politician that we all can agree is horrible and bad and shouldn't be doing what they're doing. But then it becomes, well, what if somebody just doesn't like a more liberal politician's view on something and they want to recall them, and it becomes this big back and forth. So I love to talk to students about focusing their efforts on process and specifically the democratic process of elections. So right now is when your voice is heard about who represents you and how and for how long. The more we can utilize, and really this turnout is going to be historic in November. So if we can have that turnout be normal, right? Like that should just be normal. We have 60, 70, 80% turnout, then we are going to get leaders that truly represent our community. And we hopefully won't have to go down the path of recalls. That really should be our focus. Recalls are really an extraordinary measure for extraordinary times. And as much as I hate and abhor racism, unfortunately, being a 46-year-old Black woman living in the suburbs, it's not extraordinary. It just isn't. But what we need to do is make sure we don't elect those folks into politics in the first place. But I do believe, despite the work and how much work it takes and how much effort, we should still utilize the recall process for politicians that are not doing and not representing folks the way they should be. So I love the question, and I wish it was a simpler answer, but I wholeheartedly want folks to vote in every election, and then we won't have folks that are racist in these positions to begin with.
Excellent. John, Mr. Lovick, did you want to add to that?
So again, 6 words I always use, and I hope we will all write this down. And I've used these words many times in conversations like this. You stand for what you tolerate. You stand for what you tolerate. I don't know the complete process of recalling a mayor, but I do know the complete process of when they're on the ballot. And never forget that a lot of people that we're talking about will be on the ballot in 2021. There is no better recall for an elected official. The one thing that we get to do is we serve at the pleasure of the people who vote for us. And when people want us out of office, we are gone. That's the best recall process in the world. There will be a lot of names of local officials on ballots next year. And if you want to make a difference, just remember people will be filing for office in May, and watch who's filing for office, and make sure someone runs against them, and make sure you help that person beat them. Just like we need to beat people on a national level, we need to do the same thing on local levels. That's the best recall in the world.
And And can I just add to that though, really quick? Students, even if you're not old enough to vote, first off, you can register to vote beginning at 16.
That's
So
right.
you can get that done, quick and easy. But two, you can volunteer on campaigns like John and mine's, right? So we've got some amazing interns doing amazing things, and they're not old enough to even vote for us, but it's going to make a difference in getting us in office. So if you see a politician that's not doing what you want them to do and you want them out, work on their opponent's campaign. Hopefully that's not me, right? Like, hopefully I'm doing stuff that that students enjoy, but in even the in work in a way that's meaningful to you. So if you're good on TikTok, then I need students on my TikTok account. If you're great with Instagram and IGTV, then I need your help there. So definitely lend your voice, lend your talent and your time to campaigns that are meaningful to you.
And I'll just have to say this. 2 years ago, Ms. Casey Cowan would put on a program every election, and I had over 300 students from Snohomish High. That's what I really, really miss about this type of election, because we can't get out there and get those students engaged. We had over 300 students work on our campaign, and that's how I got elected. You students are going to make a huge difference. I see you out there. I've come to several events that you've been involved in. You are going to make a difference. You are our future. And so what the question is such a thoughtful question. And the difference we're going to make is when you're out there, like April said, register to vote and vote in every election. That's the best recall in the world.
Excellent. Thank you both for that answer. And that answer really touched on another question that we had. So we'll skip that question. Another question that we do have, and we're about 15 minutes or so away from the end of our hour with you two. So thank you all for hanging tight with us here. Or hanging out. So another questions we have is, can you expand on how we best respond to the housing crisis and assisting people experiencing homelessness?
The housing crisis, the housing crisis is something that's difficult to address. We put $400 million in the Housing Trust Fund. I'm going to make this as quick as I can. We put $400 million in the Housing Trust Fund 2 years ago. We probably need to increase that to about $700 million. We need to partner. The state has to partner with local government and have more affordable housing. That's another thing that I like. We also need to give local government some incentives to build more affordable housing. And a last thing that I'm excited about was when I was on the Sound Transit Board, and I know the Speaker of the House, former Speaker of the House, worked on this. As Sound Transit is building out their spine, we need to make sure that surplus property out there is being used for public housing. Those are just a few things that we need to do. But I think the number one thing we need to do is to make sure we put more money in the Housing Trust Fund. And I think we will this year. We'll get it from 400 million probably up to about 700 million.
Thank you. Ms. Berg?
And I couldn't agree more. Representative Lovick is very correct, and I'll be supporting him 100% in fully funding the Housing Trust. It's one of the best ways to have affordable housing for folks who need it and who are housing insecure. The other things I want to focus on are building around transportation hubs, building high density houses in those housing in those places,
Yep.
And then also really working on the missing middle. And so that's that type of housing that you've got your market rate housing, you've got your low income housing, but that missing middle is folks who just need more affordable housing. And we really, as communities, all of our communities in the 44th, have to have those discussions. Here in Mill Creek, I was able to testify for a project that met that missing middle definition. Folks got really in a tizzy. They said, "Oh, we don't want more low-income housing. We don't want this. It's not in my backyard." And it's like, but it's got to be here, because we all want our kids and our grandkids to move here. We have great schools. We have a beautiful environment, and we need our entry-level firefighters, nurses, teachers, call center workers to have affordable housing in the communities that they grew up in. When we can take care of that missing middle, it's going to be way easier to have conversations about housing in general, because it's always easier and less expensive to keep someone housed rather than getting them housing. So if we can look at the full life cycle of housing, market rate, missing middle, and low income, overall, we're going to be much better as a society getting everyone housed.
Awesome. Thank you both for those answers. And we've really burned through a lot of the predetermined questions, and so we do have more questions in the chat. So I hope y'all are okay with that.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you both. So the next question we have is, what is your opinion of the Boeing company announcing to move one of their 787 lines to South Carolina and also to reduce their workforce in the Puget Sound area?
I'll take that one first. And this one is very, very personal to me because David will remember this. When I was in the legislature back in 2003, we passed the tax incentives. I actually sponsored that bill for the tax incentive for Boeing. And another thing, you might not know this, but my first badge number when I was a Washington State trooper, guess what the number was? 787. So it was almost, I feel just horrible that I had a plane named after my badge number. So on a more serious note, I wish they would not have had to make that decision, but I know those are business decisions, and I'm hopeful, reading the article, reading the Seattle Times and the Herald this morning, I'm hopeful that we will do more to attract more assembly lines here in Washington State. But like everybody else, I'm disappointed. I was disappointed when I saw the news this morning that they're talking about laying off another 7,000 people. But the market share is very, very difficult right now for the company.
Well said. And Ms. Berg?
So I've got to echo that. It just broke my heart reading the news. I'm a former Boeing employee. I've got an interesting connection to that 787 as well. I was doing procurement, new airplane development on the Sonic Cruiser, which for those of you old enough to remember was the predecessor to the 787 Dreamliner. Sonic Cruiser didn't go anywhere. That's a whole nother story, but it was a plane that was near and dear to my heart. It was wrongheaded. The decision for Boeing to move that line was absolutely wrongheaded. And one of the reasons it was wrongheaded, there were so many, but was because we have the absolute best workforce right here in the Puget Sound, best educated, safety record unparalleled. We have done everything as a community, as a government to support the Boeing company and support in the workers that they employ. And so it was just plain wrong-headed. That said, everybody wants to come here. When you look at the organic growth that we've had as a state with amazing technology-driven employers, it all happens because of our education, because of our climate, because of our environment. So look at Amazon, right? That was just here. We didn't woo them here. We didn't say, oh, come here because X, Y, and Z. And when you look at all those other cities out there that tried to woo their second headquarters, they tried to duplicate what we already have. I think Boeing's going to wake up and realize that this is absolutely the best and only place to build their next generation of airplanes. But also we are going to be able to attract more tech heavy employers because of the education, the environment, and the infrastructure that we've put in place for those types of businesses. So it was wrongheaded. I really feel confident we'll be able to woo them. But in the meantime, we're going to be talking to other amazing tech firms to come here and really take advantage of what we have to offer.
Excellent answer, you two. Thank you so much. One other question we have is, do you both support or where do you stand on ranked choice voting when it comes up in the next legislative session, apparently?
You know, I can't remember the gentleman who's been to my office many times. I have to tell you, I've studied it to the extent that I can. And there's so many issues that you deal with. You know, we passed something like 450 bills and had probably 500 amendments and Senate bills. I don't know enough about it, but I'm almost there. I'm almost there. And when all of these things settle down and we're not dealing with pandemic, we're not dealing with all these other things, and I'm not going to have, out on a corner waving, I'm going to spend more time reading about this. Because I know Representative Zach Hudgens has had a keen interest in this, and there are other members that have, he's down in the 11th district. So I need to learn more about it. And I would love for anybody to call me up and just really explain it to me so that I can clearly understand everything and be able to articulate better about it.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Ms. Berg?
So yeah, and I think ranked choice voting for me is kind of in the same category as a state bank, right? So I need to learn and listen a lot more on both of those subjects. For me, it's all about democracy, giving people more choice and having more folks at the table and their voices heard, and making progressive policies that engage more voters. And so that's why when I lump those two together, it's rather intentionally, right? I need to learn more about them, but I do believe that they are steps in a progressive direction that we're going to want to talk about. I'm going to pivot on this one though, because so for the gentleman that asked this question, for folks listening, um, we're at a point in time for moonshots, right? So there's a lot of conversations about things that we've never talked about before as a state, that we're going to start talking about because we absolutely have to. 9 months ago, 7 months ago, if you would have said, April, we're going to shut down every public school in the state in less than a week and transition folks to learning at home and doing school meals on street corners, I would have said, you're crazy. We can't do it. I would have said, we absolutely cannot do it. Did we do it? We absolutely did. That was a moonshot out of necessity, out of safety. Now that we have the word can't kind of removed from our vocabulary when it comes to education, and moving the ball forward on some of those things, I think there are going to be other things in our state that we're also going to start talking about moonshots. I'm not saying that the state bank is one of them. I'm not saying that ranked choice voting is one of them. What I'm simply saying is those conversations are going to start being had because it's a time to have them. So thank you for that question, though.
And I'll just say too, just the last thing, I think, and April is so spot on. It's a very, very, very progressive way to go. And I think at some point, like she said, we're probably going to have a broader conversation and we might get there.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you both. And so one last question we have. The Snohomish Ebony Political Action Committee is a new endeavor by African-American leaders in Snohomish County to build a stronger political voice for the African-American community in Snohomish County. What do you see as the value of communities who are traditionally marginalized having a political voice? And how do we do that?
You do it exactly the way we are doing it now. We stand up, we speak up, and we speak out. And we make sure, and I always like to tell people this, we make sure that when people like John and April Berg get elected, and we have David Simpson and we have other candidates running, we reach out, and we have you, Louis, over in Mukilteo, we reach out. We make sure. You called me 2 weeks ago and told me you wanted to do this. This has to be a priority. People need to see us out there. We can't do like, and I know there are elected officials who will do this. You can't just get elected, disappear until the next election. And then during the next election, you are out there. And we also need to write checks. We need to write checks to this organization, which I will tell you right now, as soon as this election is over, and I'm not writing checks to candidates all over the place, just give me a call and you're going to get a check from me. But that's the way we do it. We can't expect other people to do what we're not doing. And once we get into office, we have to step up and reach, like John Lewis said, we need to reach back and help those that are following us.
And I couldn't agree more with that. Representative Lovick said it just right. And I'm not sure who said this quote, but if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. Yep. And so we need to be at the table, and organizations like SEPAC allows us to be at the table. The other thing I really appreciate about this organization and just the timeliness of it is that you're going to be a part of building this bench of amazing candidates and leaders in our county to step up. I love being a leader in the education space, and now moving to a statewide role. But I need folks coming up behind me. I need organizations to mentor other candidates. We're not unicorns. We just aren't. I'm not anything special. I just, as much as I might think I am on some days where I'm really feeling myself, I'm just not. And there's a lot of suburban Black moms out there who could serve just like I'm serving, given the opportunity, given the chance, given the finances, like Representative Lovick said. So SEPAC is so important. And for me to be able to go and tell you know, a mom or a dad that I'm in friendship with, to say, you know what, talk to the folks at SEPAC. You've got a great idea. You might be the next water district commissioner. You might be the next PUD person. That's the bench. And having an organization like yours to not just go to for funding, but also for support and mentorship and knowledge is huge. Because again, this is not it, right? Like, so John and I are a part of the process, but we are by no means the only Black elected in Snohomish County, thank goodness. And by no means will we be the last. So thank you, SEPAC.
Excellent, very inspirational words. We, as I said at the top of the hour, we do truly treasure both of you and your leadership in the community, and are glad to have endorsed you. Obviously, are wishing the best for the election results. T-minus 6 or 5 days, right? So.
Yes.
Yep. So definitely thank you. You know, we're at the end of our hour, and I just want to be respectful of y'all's time. And again, thank you. If y'all have any like closing statements that you want to let our members or other folks who happen to watch this telecast know.
You know, I'll close by thanking you, both professionally and personally. I know you were out at 135th and 132nd and 35th. I think it was the second game that the Seahawks were playing, and you were out there before the game waving signs. I know Kathy was with you. I know John Ajipon was with you. And that means a lot to us. It kind of inspired me. And it's those kind of things that you do. So thank you for having us. And I'm going to say this again. I will say it. I'll raise my right hand. As soon as this election is over, I hope your organization will call me and say, yes, you said you were going to write us a check. I will write you a check. Right now, I'm writing a lot of checks to a lot of candidates throughout the state. And I see David Simpson. He knows I'm going to call him for a check tomorrow. But thank you. Thank you for all the work that you do. It means a lot.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and ditto. Thank you for having this. Thank you for having us on. I'm putting in the chat right now my phone banking times. Thank you for doing the sign waving. As you guys know, I'm not out there sign waving, so I'm so thankful for everyone who's been out there sign waving this time around. But the phone banking is huge, and that's really where for the campaign, I would love to see folks just jump on, even if you have a half hour, an hour, 15 minutes, even. That's probably about 5-6 phone calls. So thank you so much for having this forum, though, and thank you for supporting this race.
Absolutely. Thank you both. It's 7 o'clock. As I said, I want to be respectful of both of your time. We will see you out on the campaign trail, and everyone at home, please, if you have not submitted your ballot yet, please do. You're giving me a heart attack, and it's a hard time. So, all right, everybody, have a good one.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Stay safe, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye-bye,
you.
Clarence.